The sea was black, endless, relentless. Wind ripped through steel scaffolding as waves slammed the platform like a hammer against a bell. The Ocean Ranger, a towering oil rig built to survive the worst the Atlantic could offer, was groaning. Every gust, every wave, every sway of the deck felt wrong. Inside, the 84 men aboard were doing their best to ignore the tilt. It was February 14th, 1982, Valentine's Day. Families back on land were celebrating with dinners and roses, but out in the Hibernia oil field, 267 kilometers off the coast of Newfoundland, the men of the Ocean Ranger were bracing for a Category 3 storm. The Ocean Ranger was no ordinary rig. It was massive, nearly 400 feet high from the sea floor to the top of its derrick, designed to drill in waters over 1,500 feet deep. It was considered unsinkable, untouchable, but it had a flaw. At 7 p.m., a rogue wave shattered a thick glass port light in the ballast control room. Seawater rushed in. No alarms sounded. No backup system kicked in. The electrical panel, designed to manage the weight distribution of thousands of gallons of seawater, began to spark and flicker. It told the crew everything was normal. It wasn't. False readings spread confusion. Men toggled switches trying to correct non-existent imbalances. But with the system shorted, those changes began to create real problems. More water, more tilt. The Ocean Ranger began to lean. The storm worsened. Winds surged over 90 kilometers per hour. Seas rose above 60 feet. Below deck, the ballast tanks began to flood uncontrollably. Pumps failed, doors jammed. Then came the blackout. By midnight, emergency calls were being placed. "We have a problem here," the voice said. Calm, controlled, but clipped. Distress signals followed, relayed between the Ocean Ranger and nearby supply ships. The Seaforth Highlander and Nordertor tried to make their way toward the rig, but the waves were too violent. Helicopters were grounded by gale force winds. At 1:30 a.m., the final communication was sent. "We're preparing to abandon the platform." In the dark, men scrambled to launch lifeboats. Some were thrown into the sea before they could board. Others clung to life rafts as the cold punched through their clothing like knives. Survival suits were in short supply. Training had been minimal. There was no formal abandoned ship procedure. No one knew who was in charge. And the rig kept leaning. At 3:07 a.m., the Ocean Ranger capsized and sank, vanishing into 80-meter deep waters, carrying every man aboard with it. By sunrise, search teams were in the air. Planes and helicopters scoured the surface. Ships combed the wreck zone. All they found were fragments, an overturned lifeboat, empty rafts, broken equipment. Dozens of bodies were recovered in the coming days. None had made it far. Most had drowned within minutes. The water was just above freezing. There were no survivors. Across Newfoundland and beyond, families waited for news that never came. Wives were told their husbands wouldn't be coming home. Children watched the news, hoping for a miracle. None came. Investigations followed. What they uncovered was damning. The ballast system had no manual override. The crew had never been trained to respond to flooding in the control room. The rig's watertight doors didn't seal. And prior warnings about the port light vulnerability, the false sense of invincibility, the lack of cold weather survival gear had all been ignored. The Ocean Ranger wasn't lost to nature alone. It was lost to neglect, to arrogance, to the belief that a platform could be unsinkable in a sea that had never kept such promises. In the aftermath, Canada overhauled its offshore safety protocols. New training programs were launched, new engineering standards imposed, but nothing brought those 84 men back. No plaque on the shoreline could capture what their final hours were like: pitch-black skies, a rig twisting under them, radios crackling with uncertainty, and the sound of waves too loud to scream over. They went down in the dark, trusting a machine that was supposed to hold, and it didn't. Thank you for listening to the Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths